Coming up on Currently, Beth Milligan is here to help us pave through the latest road construction news, plus a few possible bumps in the road for the chair of the Road Commission. All of that and more coming up on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost, and this podcast was recorded on Wednesday, July 15th. The Tigers are 44-52 in the AL Central. Meanwhile, the Traverse City Pittsbitters are 29-17, leading the Great Lakes East. Support for Currently comes from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community, and you can visit them in person today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Beth Milligan, head writer for Traverse City Ticker, back. And it's like both of us got the memo to wear cool shirts today.
Oh, yeah, we do kind of like, they have this sort of similar collar thing going on here with the button down.
I always call this like my stylish Diane Keaton shirt that's not pure white.
Yeah.
You know?
It's button chic, a little business casual.
Button chic is the new thing that I'm going to be looking for everywhere. Well, last week we were out. There were some things going on in the National Cherry Festival.
And all kinds of things,
all sorts of stuff, but we are back with lots of hot news this week.
Lots of road-related news. It's just kind of the way it shook out this week.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, maybe understandably, because summer tends to be like peak construction season.
Yes, it really does, but we've also had a lot of roads needing some repairs, and we're going to give updates on some of those repairs, including that big one, the US 31 project, which is entering into its final countdown.
Finally, yes.
I can't sing too much of that or we have to pay. So, yes, we are getting into the final stage here. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so the rebuild is going to officially move into its final phase on Monday. So this segment is going to last from starting next week until about mid-November is the estimated completion date for the project overall. So in this final phase, the crews will be focusing on US 31 from west of the Long Lake Road, Maddie Parkway roundabout. To Reynolds Road. So southbound US 31 traffic will be maintained. Northbound US 31 traffic has a detour in place that'll use a bunch of roads around Reynolds to get around that. The good news is, especially for people who are going to, let's say, Interlaken concerts this summer, as I know you and I are going to some coming up, the roundabout is open. So you can get through that intersection now. You can get out to, Now, whether you can figure out how to navigate the roundabout is a personal decision for
you.
That's
on you, Bo. That's on you.
We have enough big roundabouts in our area now that hopefully people have figured out how to use them.
Yeah.
But it is open.
That is very good. It feels like it's ahead of schedule.
It's going great. Yeah, they've been staying on time. And I know out in Green Lake Township, the officials out there have been sharing a lot of updates. So I know that's been a headache for people out on that side of town, including the neighbors around that area. But we're getting there. We're getting through it. So that was one. The one this week that is causing a lot of traffic headaches is closer into TC is at Cass and South Airport.
Yeah, that is like, what is going on there? There's just holes in the ground.
Yeah. So I was proud that we did this story because this is two things. One, we were trying to explain the major traffic issues that people are seeing, and they are seeing them this week. I mean, by the time the episode comes out on Friday, hopefully we'll have seen this wrap up for the time being. But Tuesday, Wednesday, especially, traffic was quite gnarly around Cass and South Airport. We were explaining that because of the sewer main issue. And the sewer main, people have noticed for months, that right turn lane from South Airport onto Cass has been closed for months. And we've had readers, asking us, what's happening? It just seems like there's some hoses around there, or like the sewer hasn't been fixed. Like, what is going on?
Right.
So before even the emergency repairs had happened, I had reached out to the Department of Public Works and I was like, I want to do a ticker story that's like, explains the history of what's going on with the sewer main. Right. Why can't we get this lane reopened? Like, what's happening? And then in the process of doing that story, these emergency repairs came up. So it ended up being a very time-sensitive story. So the quick of it is there is a pipe in that area. It is called a gravity sewer main. And that's one in which the sewage is kind of just flowing naturally downhill from a high point to a low point.
Yeah.
So I know Not the greatest image, but in other pipes, sometimes you have to have other mechanisms to get it flowing. But in a gravity, it flows naturally.
Sure. Okay.
It was built in the 1970s. The challenge with that time period, and we are seeing this in many different areas of the city, is that they often made those pipes out of clay.
Oh, that doesn't hold up.
Clay is not an ideal material. And the example that Noah Carberg, who's the Department of Public Works, he's one of their officials there. He had explained, he said a terracotta flower pot.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
He said, let's say you accidentally kick it over and you get a crack in it. People who have those flower pots know, once you have a crack in it, it kind of spider webs. It's hard to hold together. That is what we're dealing with these old clay mains. So last summer, a contractor who had been drilling to put in conduit, communications conduit,
right,
drilled right into that sewer main. And Noah told me, by the way, that contractor kind of just disappeared.
Oh.
And they were never able to really track down and make responsible for what happened there.
Right.
But it drilled right into the sewer main. They replaced a small section of the sewer main at that time, repaved the site, and thought, they were good to go. But this spring, another break occurred in the main, not in the same spot, but further upstream.
Okay.
And we don't know, because of the challenge of this location where the current break is, they don't quite know if it was related to if the spider web thing happened that we talked about, or if it was a separate issue. They haven't had a chance to really examine it yet. But that main in that spot is right near the intersection. It's 15 feet deep, and there is a lot of infrastructure on top of it. So if you think about Cass and South Airport, that intersection, which is one of the busiest in Traverse City, has gas, fiber, sewer, water, traffic infrastructure, all compounded on one site.
Wow.
So in the area where they would need to dig into the main, there is a huge traffic mass that puts the signal out over the intersection. And then this big concrete pier that is stabilizing the mass. That pier is 10 tons. So they have to get that stuff out of the way to even get down to the main to fix it. And the reason this has been taking months is you take that main down so that the traffic arm, so you can get down to the main. How are you going to control traffic?
Yeah.
Because you've got your signal out.
It's a very big,
So they said they briefly considered turning that intersection to a 4-way stop. And then they were like, that's insane.
Wow.
It won't work.
Oh, no.
They said the intersection would fail. So we can't do that. The next option is maybe we put up some temporary lights like we have at Hartman.
Sure.
The problem there is, again, such a complex intersection. There's all kinds of different poles and sight lines. Even to set up the poles to put up the temporary lights, there's too many things on the ground. It's just very complex. And Noah said, I just want people to understand how complex it is. He's like, this is like the Beitner Bridge.
Yeah.
It is this complicated to figure this out. It's not that we don't care about the sewer or just been letting it sit. It is so complicated to figure out how to get to it. When you have something that's 15 feet down, you can't just do a narrow hole and then go 15 feet.
No.
It'll collapse behind you. You have to dig at an angle so that it doesn't collapse. So then that makes a big dig field to get into the main. It's going to require closing multiple lanes of traffic. Their thought was they couldn't get it done by the 4th of July. Let's wait until after Labor Day.
Sure.
We've got the crazy summer traffic. We also have more traffic this summer because Beitner is out.
Yep.
And a lot of that traffic is going to South Airport and Cass. So that was their plan. They had been planning to just wait until after Labor Day. And then the hole where the main is, the soil around it started eroding.
Yep.
And now that's a risk that the traffic lane could actually collapse. So Team Elmers was monitoring that site for the county. They were like, hey, problem here. Soil is shifting. This is like a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So this week they had to do emergency repairs. So the closure this week is they've closed 2 lanes on South Airport, 2 lanes on Cass. They are getting in there. Once they get down inside to the main, they'll do one of 2 things, though. They'll put like a sleeve on it, like a kind of a clamp to hold it if it's not that bad and that can do it. If it's like, oh, a sleeve isn't going to work, they're going to use the bypass system that they're using right now. They put all the sewage into separate pipes.
Okay.
Temporary pipes.
I was going to ask you what happened to the sewage, but
it's not just disappeared. It's not evaporated. They have bypass hoses.
Okay.
And so they will encase those bypass hoses and bury them so that the lane can be paved over. We can get that right lane open. But then either of those 2 solutions will still require, after Labor Day, more work. And depending on how bad the break is on the main and what solution they use, what Band-Aid they use, we could see a short project after Labor Day, or we could see up to 2 weeks of closures with major lane closures again, because they could have to replace like 45 feet of that sewer main.
Wow.
So we just don't know yet. Probably after this week, even by the time this episode airs, maybe we'll have more of a clue, but it's a very complex project.
That sounds complex, and it also makes me just never want to drive over there ever. Like, the soil's moving, and then you start seeing cars, like going into little holes.
Yes, you don't want that.
You don't want that. But yeah, I mean, wonderful article, very, very well researched, well explained. That's something that I really appreciate about your writing, is that you explain everything really well. And I mean, just everything based on solid facts, man.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that could tie very easily into the other update for our first segment here, which is just, a Beitner talking about complex projects. To me, they're very related, because one thing I want to try to do in the ticker all the time is when I see people frustrated about something, like what is happening with this turn lane on South Airport, or why isn't Beitner built yet?
Yeah.
I try to address that. I have learned a little bit, maybe this is just a PSA for the public, to really try to have some patience, because I have seen with both of these projects that the Road Commission, and in the case of South Airport, the Department of Public Works, they are on it.
Yeah.
When you have really complicated infrastructure like this, it does take time. I know a lot of people online think they could build a bridge overnight or they could just get down to that sewer main and fix it. But usually the experts, in this case, I have not seen them unnecessarily delaying things. It's just very complicated. So this week, we did finally make some progress on Beitner, though. The Road Commission on Monday had a special meeting. They did approve an agreement with MDOT, the state, for the Beitner Bridge replacement. MDOT is kind of, they're co-leading this. That's the other important thing to know, is that this isn't just a Road Commission project. It's 80% federally funded. Oh. And MDOT is the pass-through for that federal funding.
Okay.
So they essentially, MDOT's the one who handled the bidding. They opened the bids last week. They choose the bidder because they have to make sure, especially with a bridge project, that it meets state standards. Mm-hmm. So they sort of screen the bidders. We did have a low bidder. That company is called the Anlin Corporation. They're about $3.7 million, which did come in a little bit lower than budget, which is good. So again, federal funding will cover 80%, Road Commission 20%. MDOT is in the process of finalizing that contract with Anlin. And then the Road Commission will begin coordinating on the construction schedule.
Okay.
I think folks can likely see construction starting there soon, maybe in the next couple weeks. The goal is to get the bridge open before the end of the year.
I mean, that would be amazing.
And I have seen a lot of folks online, again, who are like, why don't we just throw up a temporary bridge? Or, I think what was also confusing is the bid document said that it would be complete in 2027. I think what's important for folks to know is the word complete with road projects is different than how we think about it as a layperson.
Right.
So the bridge could be reopened. The goal is to get the bridge reopened, again, by Christmas, by the end of the year. Complete in road projects means like everything is like seeded, grass is in, sometimes a little touches. So just know when you see a completion date, it doesn't necessarily mean
that's the day.
That traffic can't get through there. So that's the goal. I would give them patience because they had to accelerate this major bridge project a year ahead of schedule under emergency conditions. So they're trying. Yeah,
you gotta give them a lot of credit. I mean, these are unprecedented things that we've seen. When we lost the Beitner Bridge during the historic flooding, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. It was already slated to be repaired. We already knew that this was something that we had to address, but I don't know about you. I was seriously shocked that had happened. So the response time, the way that they're dealing with things, I feel like they're doing a really good job and trying to keep the public up to date through interviews with you and other journalists, but also their own social media.
They do videos and go out to the site. So I do think they're trying. They had said all along they thought it would be at least 6 months in April, and we knew it could be longer depending when they started. The other just last quick road thing that we'll update for this segment is that also on the meeting on Monday, road commissioners approved a $3.2 million contract with Team Elmers for reconstructing Hammond Road. So that is going to be between Carlisle and Town Line roads, right around the 3 Mile intersection. The 3-mile intersection itself is also going to be reconstructed. The 2 eastbound lanes in Hammond are going to be extended through that light, and the light will be rebuilt. So folks, just know if you're out on the east side of town that will probably start before the end of July. Elmer's has to get through the intersection done before school starts, so that intersection will be open for school. And then if there's any of the projects still to happen, it would be west, like towards the town line area.
Well, good. I mean, I have faith in Elmer's to get that done.
And there's a lot of like safe route to school sidewalks and new sidewalk going into out there. So a lot of work happening in that area this year.
In Carlisle, that's the area where like there's the Traverse Bay Children's Advocacy Center is over there. There's also
the new sports complex.
New sports complex.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be busy.
It'll be busy, but just again, patience is the order.
It's going to be beautiful, everyone.
Yeah.
So the repairs have been approved, but when we come back, the Road Commission has some concerns about the chair of the Road Commission, and we're going to drive down that road. But first, a word for our lead supporter, West Shore Bank. So let me ask you a question. When was the last time your checking account did anything for you? I ask myself that all the time. At West Shore Bank, they've introduced checking accounts designed to fit real life. So if you'd like your money to work a little harder, check out Shoreline High Yield Checking, which gives you the opportunity to earn more from the account that you're already using every day. Or maybe you'd rather get rewarded for spending. I say that all the time too, right? Where's my gold star? With Shoreline Cashback Checking, you can earn cash back and gold stars on everyday debit card purchases. Because if you're buying groceries, or you're filling up the gas tank, or you're grabbing that coffee, you might as well get something back, right? Both accounts come with convenient digital banking tools, easy access to your money, and the kind of personal service that you'd expect from a community bank that's been serving Northern Michigan families and businesses for generations. So if you're ready for a checking account that does a little more than just hold up your money, stop by your West Shore Bank branch or visit westshorebank.com. West Shore Bank Community Banking with modern solutions. Terms, conditions, and qualifications apply. Third-party data rates may apply. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. All right, and we are back and transitioning into another, what's another pun that I can do here?
I think you've honestly got that, but we'll shift,
am I just good? Shifting gears, thank you. I'm like doing this is how you shift gears, right? With my hand. I can't remember. We are shifting gears though, but staying on kind of the same topic here. There have been some concerns about the Grand Traverse County Road Commission chair. And I want you to address some of those concerns.
Yeah, this is a story. So this also happened at the Monday meeting, special meeting of the Road Commission. But it is a story I have been working behind the scenes on reporting for the last week or two. Yeah. And then it, became timely again this week with this meeting. So essentially for 2 meetings in a row, the Road Commission has had a very tense conversation about Chair Alan Lehman, concerns that he is acting outside of his duties as a road commissioner. At the board's June meeting, they discussed a legal memo that discussed what a road commissioner can do. And just to quickly summarize that, you're really prohibited by law from doing kind of any business outside of public meetings.
Sure.
Having a financial interest in contracts that you're approving.
That would make sense.
You're kind of limited to, making policy decisions. The day-to-day operations are entrusted to staff. That's also true usually with city and county commissions. The commission is kind of the legislative body. They make the kind of big policy decisions, and then staff execute those, carry those out, right? If a board member is to kind of do any business outside of the meetings or without the approval of the rest of the board, that typically violates the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
So this memo had come up because multiple employees had complained about Chair Lehman to various road commissioners.
Okay.
The concerns were that he was very hands-on behind the scenes, doing things from personally going out and measuring driveways to sort of, check if they're meeting road commission standards, directly negotiating with property owners on easements on behalf of the road commission, hand delivering bids for companies that he is financially affiliated with, and telling staff not to pay contracts because he believed the materials weren't up to spec. So several of those concerns were about a sand order this spring. And I will tell you, sometimes It's the little things in government.
Yeah.
Like sand order, you could just picture the average person falling asleep.
Yeah.
Road commissions need sand. This is what they use along with salt, right?
Yeah.
To maintain the roads in the winter especially. They had a sand bid out this winter. 5 people bid on it. They were ready to approve the low bidder in February, which is a company called Christal. And Alan Lehman, who also owns a company that has sand and other materials, told the board that he thought the pricing was too high.
Okay.
That they should rebid it and see if they could get more competitive offers.
So in that instance, because he has personal knowledge of sand, right, and materials, would you say that it's within his right as a commissioner to say, hey, that seems a little high. I have a business just like this and it feels a little high. Is that normal?
Yeah. So I think, and we'll kind of, as we get into this a little bit, what I think this is the crux of the problem, or the challenge that has come up with the board is, Alan has a long experience in various aspects. He also had a paving company before. He is very experienced with the road commission. He, in fact, has successfully sued the road commission in the past. So he feels very passionate about the industry and feels like he's an advocate on behalf of taxpayers because he understands the stuff and he wants kind of consistent standards.
Okay.
The flip side is that as passionate as you may be about a topic, there are still laws and levels of bureaucracy in government that you have to follow. You're legally required to follow. In the case of the sand order, him suggesting let's go out to bid again, what ended up happening is they didn't get more bids, they actually got less. So it dropped from 5 to 4. A couple companies dropped out. Perhaps, I haven't interviewed all those companies, but one reason is this is typically supposed to be a closed bid process, so everyone submits a sealed bid and then you open it up and see who's the lowest bidder. When you've already published all the prices in a packet and you go out to bid again, anyone who's going to bid can see all those prices.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they'll bid lower, so maybe it's a good thing, but it does kind of complicate what's supposed to be a confidential process.
Right.
When they came back again in April with the second round of bids, fewer bids, and this one new company had bid, the Fisher Corporation. Alan's company makes materials for the Fisher Corporation.
Okay,
so he has a direct interest with Fisher. He did not disclose. At the beginning of every road commission meeting, there's a chance where they can disclose conflicts of interest. He did not disclose a conflict of interest. And in the sand discussion, he did not mention that he has a financial tie to one of the bidders. Now, that company, Fisher, did see the prices from the first packet. They did bid lower than everyone else. But another company, Christal, which had the first round bid the first time.
Yeah, and that's the Christal Aggregate Company or whatever. Yeah.
They, I think from talking to some folks behind the scenes, perhaps a little bit because they were upset about the process, but they also came in quite low.
Oh.
Almost maybe taking, I don't know how much money they'll even make on it, but perhaps a little bit out of spite. But they were upset and they came in with a very low bid themselves. So they outbid themselves. And they end up winning the contract.
Okay.
So Alan did vote for them. Everybody voted for it. But again, in that conversation, it was never mentioned that he has a tie to one of the bidders.
Okay.
He had also, in that process, this company, Fisher, had faxed in their bid, which is not allowed because it's supposed to be sealed in an envelope. Mm-hmm. And Alan personally took that bid and delivered it to the staff.
So they faxed it in.
Didn't follow the correct bid process.
Follow the process. He then sealed it up and then hand delivered it.
Right.
Which is not usually what you do.
No, and I think that made staff feel uncomfortable because they were aware of Alan's connection to that company, and the hand deliveries sort of to them felt like there was a strong suggestion or support for that company.
Even one of the road commissioners, Elisa Korn, said it put the staff in a bad position.
Yes, and Joe Underwood, another road commissioner, said it should never, never, ever, ever happen.
Right.
He used ever like 4 times.
Okay.
So that was a problem. The other problem is that even once Christal received the bid, and Alan did vote for it, it was the lowest, but he then started inspecting their materials, looking at the testing reports, and telling staff that he didn't think they were up to spec, so they shouldn't pay the company's invoice. And again, that is a road commissioner acting on his own to make decisions about that would normally be a board decision.
Right.
Whether you're going to pay an invoice or not is a board decision.
So had Lehman taken that to the board,
right,
and said, I'm a little concerned about this. I don't know if the materials are up to snuff, and I'm wondering if we should not pay them until we know if this is, that probably would have been okay.
Yes. And that is what the board debated. Again, typically the day-to-day paying of an invoice is either going to be to staff, or if there's a problem, it's going to come back to the board to discuss how to do this. It wouldn't be one road commissioner directing staff not to pay an invoice. And I think that could have potentially opened the road commission up to a lawsuit because that company, was unhappy about not getting paid for their order. So the board did talk about this on Monday. It was, again, another tense conversation. Joe Underwood said his quote here was, "We signed a contract for the sand. We have an individual on this board who actually has an interest in sand product, stopping us paying a contract that we approved. That is a problem." He thought it was probably a violation of the county's ethics code.
Yeah.
And you could tell his frustration. I mean, he was grilling Alan at the meeting and he said, "What is going on? Do you have an issue with this company, like a personal history? Why are you hell-bent on messing up this process?" Essentially is what he said.
Yeah.
And so they did vote 4-1 on Monday to pay that contract. Alan was opposed. Multiple experts have looked at Christal's material and said it is up to spec.
Okay.
Staff said the same thing. Now, when I interviewed Alan, he was kind of dismissive of staff's expertise on materials. He essentially said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "I make this stuff for a living. They don't have the same experience I do. They don't even know if it's up to spec."
Yeah.
I will just say I looked at multiple testing reports as well as the experts who had weighed in on it and said Christal's material is great, better than what we used to make in-house.
Yeah, he actually said that staff have, quote, zero experience with materials while he produces them for a living. We don't know that to be true.
Yes,
right?
and I think, talking to staff and road commissioners, I think they feel they do have experience. Yeah. They also have experts they retain, like third-party people who do the testing for them.
Right.
So I think that comment, though, and some of the other comments that happened in these two tense meetings definitely showed there is some friction between Alan and the staff. That is why these complaints came forward in the first place. I think Alan sees himself as being a guy who asks tough questions and has high expectations for staff, which isn't always a bad thing. He really is, again, he feels passionate that he's doing that to do a good job and to make sure the road commission gets the materials it ordered. On the other hand, staff and other road commissioners have again said, even if you were trying to do it for the right reasons, you have to do it the right way.
Right.
And you can't just ignore the law and go around and make these decisions that are supposed to be board decisions.
Right.
So I think where we left off with that is that, he did tell me he would not get involved in a bid process again. He did acknowledge that maybe that wasn't great. He said he hadn't realized it was a big deal, but he understood that people were upset. He did tell the board he would bring issues to them to consider together rather than acting on his own. But I would characterize his comments to me and also on Monday in a public letter that he read as being pretty defiant. He was very dismissive of the legal memo that outlined his responsibilities. He told me it was terrible. He said at the meeting it was vague and incomplete. His last comment to the board was, he said, basically, let me do my job. This is how I do my job. I go talk to people. I make site visits. I gather research and information. However you want to do your job, you can. This is how I do my job.
But, and I can understand that. If he were, let's say, an independent contractor for the road commission and he was paid directly to go out and make site visits and do all these inspections and things like that. But the job of the chair of the road commission is not that. So I wonder if there's just a complete lack of understanding as to what the responsibilities of commissioners on the road commission are.
Or this is an example where I think in just fairly characterizing his comments to me, he feels like the law is open to interpretation.
Sure.
That he said, I would like to look more at this law about the road commission duties because, I don't know if I agree with this legal memo. And so he doesn't seem fully accepting of at least the road commission's own legal counsel interpretation of his job. So I do wonder if this will continue to be a recurring conflict. Dan Watkins, who's the road commission manager, also read a letter to the board, which is a little unusual. Dan is a fairly quiet-spoken manager at the Road Commission. I mean, he does these videos and things like try to communicate with the public, but he generally, I think, tries to stay out of the politics that I've seen. In this case, it was very awkward because he essentially needs to advocate on behalf of his staff who have concerns. So he read a letter saying that, he felt he was being characterized by Alan as being somehow rebellious or insubordinate. And he pointed out that he has a professional obligation when he's receiving instructions that he feels like may be illegal or against board policy to flag those for board discussion, and just said that's an important part of responsible leadership. So we will see how the situation evolves if Alan continues to, act in a way that maybe flouts some of these boundaries that road commissioners are supposed to follow. I would anticipate it would come up again. He, though, has acknowledged in some ways that he would try to scale that back.
These are really difficult positions, I think, for the road commission members, right? Because I serve on a government board, and versus maybe some other smaller nonprofit boards and things like that, where you're maybe you have a little bit more of an influence when it comes to, say, programming or when it comes to fundraising, things like that. When you're on a government board, you're sort of the liaison between the staff and between the community, the taxpayers. It can be a difficult spot, but you really do have to have it spelled out as to what you are obligated to do on behalf of the people who have appointed you. Right? Or, and what you're supposed to let the staff and the experts do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to make. I mean, you have to have those conversations because let me just say, I serve on the Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Board. We have so many wonderful people on that board who are, I would say, experts in the field of mental health. But their role is not to oversee staff. Their role is to oversee the chair that oversees staff. So it feels really like there's just an imbalance.
And I have seen this many, many years in covering different various commissions that it can be difficult for commissioners to, like a lot of times I'll see, and this is true, the city commission, county commission, you have commissioners who will be in the office every day talking to staff or very hands-on. And it's a fine line to walk between being an active, informed commissioner who's really trying to do the best for their constituents, for the public, and understanding that you sometimes have to delegate those things to staff. It's not your responsibility or even your right to do some of those things. It's challenging. I think, again, it's often coming from a place of wanting to do the right thing. I think we also take in consideration the larger political climate of perhaps we're in an era where there's a little bit more disregard for the legal process and for bureaucracy because people just sort of impatient and want to be able to get things done and see government, which is true. Government can sometimes have a lot of red tape that's infuriating.
Yeah, it's very infuriating.
But it also, can't just be disregarded.
Yeah, it's this is an interesting conversation. And like you said, I believe that a lot of these things are happening with good intent. But intent and impact are two different things, right? So you may have the best intentions in the world, but the impact might not land the way you want it to land. Well, thank you for covering that. And I know you'll have some updates as this story continues and progresses. I know you're working on a story about rating the condition of the city streets.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick mention of that.
Yeah.
Folks can check out the full story at trevorsticker.com. But yes, we had a story on Thursday this week about this discussion from the City Commission on Monday. And to me, it was pretty interesting, especially when we're talking about roads and everybody has complaints about roads and the condition of roads. This PACER system, which is essentially a report card for how the city streets are. The city is one of the few actually in the state of Michigan that they update this every year. They go out and evaluate the condition of the streets.
Wow.
They rate it good, fair, poor. And they are working very hard now on sort of having that report card and trying to get their numbers up. So, for example, trying to move more of the fair roads into the good category. The big thinking here is that when you let a road get all the way to the poor category, you then have to reconstruct it.
Oh.
So we've seen this on Monroe Street right now. It is under reconstruction.
Right.
14th Street last year, he had a section that had to be, that whole corridor will have to be reconstructed. The city is trying to proactively do things like crack sealing, cape sealing, just basically pavement preservation to extend the lifespan of roads, because when you make that upfront investment in maintenance, that can be, maybe tens of thousands of dollars versus letting them deteriorate, having to do a full reconstruct, and each reconstruct is millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So it's just a plan in the city to try to be more proactive in maintaining roads so we don't let them get into bad shape.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I know I need to repave my driveway.
Well, there you go.
And I just got to get out there with my little brush. I actually don't know how that happens.
I would like to come see you do that. I think that would be very entertaining.
I don't want you to underestimate me. I can get a lot done. Let me tell you.
I believe that. I believe that.
You do believe. Well, it's good to know. Let's not get them to poor condition.
Yeah,
let's just try to keep it up. Maintain. There you go. We are going to talk a little bit about what is happening this week, and I want to kick things off with something I'm really excited about, because not only are you going to be the individual interviewing for the National Writer Series, which is wonderful. So I try to come every time you are the person interviewing. But the person you are interviewing is a friend of the show.
Yeah, Jillian Lane.
Yeah, Jillian Lane. And folks may know her as Jillian from
the
Northern Express. Thank you. She wrote a book.
She did.
And the book is, kind of, people are going to love this.
Yeah.
It's getting a lot of praise already. It's fiction, and the premise of it, I'm just tickled I can't wait to read it. So
it's great. I'm finishing it right now. I always try to read the author's book close to the event, so it's fresh in my mind when I do the interview.
So first of all, this is Wednesday, July 22nd.
Yes.
Okay.
And the book comes out, I believe, the day before. So it's coming out next week. It's called Henry Tudor Must Die.
Uh-huh.
I know a lot of people are big into like Tudors and royalty.
Yeah.
If you're into that, you're probably going to really love this. It's very much like a feminist fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a sort of reimagining of Henry Tudor's life and his wives, instead of, the sort of very tragic and misogynistic end that most of them had at the time.
Yeah, off with their heads, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they sort of unite together in a sisterhood to take Henry Tudor down.
So it's
Very
Henry VIII,
yes.
right? And she's taking some historical facts, but then she's adding a little bit of, feminist
it's
witchy fantasy stuff.
Very well researched. Like the history surrounding the events is researched, but then it's a fun, creative take on, okay, well, what if these women had more of an agency to fight back? It's really entertaining. I'm very excited for her. She's doing tons of national press. This is a big national book. She's got a multi-book deal. So I know there's more. I know she's been working on book 2. So we're gonna have a great conversation. It's a good like female rage book.
One of my favorite things about this too is that Jillian is a writer, obviously, and she's an author. She's been published before. But she was also formerly with the National Writer Series. So I love this idea, as were you.
Yeah.
So I love this idea that both of you are on this stage in different capacities now. And I don't know, it just makes me happy.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really envisioning this as like a Hulu series too. Can we make that happen?
Great potential for that. I mean, maybe we'll talk to Jillian about that next week. But yes, and if folks want to get tickets, it's at nationalwriterseries.org. I think it's going to be super fun.
Yeah, and it's happening at Milligan Auditorium at the Denos Museum Center. There's also virtual tickets. There's in-person tickets. You can purchase the book right there.
Yep.
So, this hometown kid made good, national book. She's going to be headed out on a book tour.
Yeah.
So this is big stuff. I'm very excited. And it's launching here in Traverse City.
Yes.
So get your tickets, dang it.
Yeah.
Other things are happening too, obviously. We both are doing something on Saturday.
Yeah. So this is your first time.
It's my first time.
This is maybe, I don't even know how long it's been going, 8th time. This is the big annual bocce tournament at the Village at Grand Traverse Commons. And I always explain to people who aren't in it, like, I always compare it to like the wizarding tournament in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's on the great front lawn of the Commons. There's 32 teams of 4 players who play. So it's a big event. And then everyone gets there early Saturday morning, and everybody has tents set up. And your team names are all typically puns. So like mine is Joni Loves Bocce.
Mine is Some Like It Shot.
Very fun. People have T-shirts and banners. And you have food and drink everywhere. It's a whole day event. It's just like a big tournament. I love bocce. You have everybody from, kids playing to first-time people in the tournament to, little old Italians dragging oxygen tanks, and they're usually the best ones.
Yeah.
But it's really, really fun, and it's a great tradition, and it always sells out. So it's a full bracket tournament, and you're just kind of in it for the day. It's great.
It's really exciting. I'm excited to be a part of it. I think myself and one other member, we've never played. So I think we've had 2 times where we played bocce.
Yeah.
And then we're playing with your partner, Joe, and our friend Ben, who has played.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I'm just in it to have fun and to speak a little Italian and eat some good food.
It is.
Yeah.
And then you take like a huge, long Italian lunch. Everybody's like eating and drinking all day. There's Italian music, like the Godfather theme is like blaring in the background. It's just like such a fun cultural event. And I would compare it also to a little bit like a golf scramble.
Yeah.
Where like you don't have to be the best player on the team if your team can carry you.
Right.
It's easy to learn, and it's not physically overly demanding. So a lot of abilities and people can play. Yeah. It's just a great time.
I really love it. And I love all things Italian culture.
Yeah, me too.
So I honestly don't know why it's taken me so long to get into bocce, but now that I'm in.
And if you want to, you can't play. Like I said, it's sold out. But if you want to stop by, lots of people just come because it's such a scene and hang out for the day or visit people. You're welcome to stop by and watch too.
Yeah. And by the way, at the Commons, there is a bocce court.
Yes, by Left Foot Charlie.
By Left Foot Charlie. So you can just play anytime. And this is literally one of the easiest games I've ever played. I was like, wait, you were teaching. And I'm like, but what else do you do? And
easy to learn, tough to master.
Tough to master.
But
also I'm like, oh, that's what it is. You're just chasing that little Polina.
Yeah.
There it is. So we are excited about that. And we're excited about Beth and Jillian. So again, if you would like to get your tickets to see Beth and Jillian on the National Writer Series stage, go to nationalwriterseries.org. Get the tickets, get the book, support this really great story. I'm really excited about that. Anything else we want to talk about?
This is great. I'm excited. We're in the throes of summer. Let's do this.
We are in the throes of summer. We are coming out of a very long heat wave, I think.
Yeah.
So
Irish people are not meant for this weather, I'll just say. Or today as we're recording, it looks like the apocalypse out right now because of the wildfire smoke, and that is crazy too.
I know, it really is. I was like, what is happening here? But, I'm going to go to the beach.
Yeah, that's all right. These are the times we're in.
These are the times. Well, thanks to Beth Milligan for another great episode of Currently. I'd love to invite you to subscribe to the show on all the platforms. You can do that super easy, crystalfrost.com. That way you can follow us on social media. You can subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and on Facebook. And Currently is a Compass Local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions in Traverse City, Michigan. Big thanks to our lead supporter, West Shore Bank. Start saving today at westshorebank.com. We'll see you next week.